having someone there just to mentor you it's so invaluable. Like maybe during the time you don't really see the value in it, but it's immensely valuable because you can like those questions. Like a lot of people have doubt, right? Whenever they get started something new, they just feel like it's not meant for me. I don't know if I can do it. But when you have someone who you can physically see, talk to, maybe even a family member that you can like say, okay, if he can do it, I can do it too. But the big one, I would say the big dog certification that if you want to become a network engineer, you're 100% sure you want to become one, get a CCNA. Don't waste your time with any other certification. That is the gold standard certification right now, I would say.
I've been involved in some sort of networking projects or things that I've worked on in the various roles that I've worked on in the tech industry. One of the things that come across and understood is that there's a physical aspect to networking, you know?
And I'm glad you brought that up because like networking, like I said, it's a very unique industry in tech and I like to call it like the blue collar of tech because we're literally the physical workers there. Like we can actually go into a physical data center where there's tons of routers, tons of switches, tons of optical gear, expensive equipment, lots of fans, and you walk in there, you have your laptop, you're connected onto it, you're configuring it. So there's a lot of moving parts. You can play around with stuff. So it's like if you guys, you want to get into tech, but you also want that physical side of it, definitely look into networking because networking offers you that. And one of the cool things about networking is like you can get into cybersecurity, you can get into cloud, you can get into like automation. There's like just because you're in networking doesn't mean you can get stuck there. Like there's so many sub niches that value the skill of networking.
Hello and welcome to the Tech Certified podcast. I'm your host, Caleb, only certified. And once again, this is the podcast where we interview tech creators and tech professionals who inspire us on our journeys in the tech industry. Today, we're finally getting to discuss a little bit on the side of the role of networking and the role of a network engineer. Today, we have a network engineer and content creator, Wali, joining us on this episode of the podcast. Wali, how you doing, man?
Good, Caleb. I'm doing well, man. So excited to be on this podcast. Definitely, I've done some podcasts before, but definitely haven't done one in a while. So super excited.
Amazing. This is going to be fun. And we'll start off, as we always do, by just asking you, who is Wali? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Wali. As Caleb said, I'm based here in the United States, specifically Denver, Colorado. I'm into so many things. Like every day I feel like I get a new hobby. So like right now I'm like into tennis and that's like my new grind right now. But as for like what I do on a day-to-day basis, I'm a network engineer that I've been for about almost 3 years now. So I've been doing that. But I went to school, got a degree in computer information systems. And as of now, I've just been working. I just started a YouTube channel pretty recently and that has been pretty fun, pretty exciting. We'll get to talk about that pretty soon. But that's been super fun. But that's basically me in a nutshell. I'm into tech. I'm into sports. I'm into gaming. I'm pretty much into anything. I got a whole range of hobbies. But that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. So cool. And like, I've been following you just recently as you've been doing your content creation. And I realized like seeing your LinkedIn and everything, like we've had probably similar lengths of career. And I figure like in 3 years or like two years and 8 months or whatever, a lot happens in your career and you learn a lot and you do a lot. 3 years is actually such a long time when you look at it as it is. So I just wanted you to briefly walk us through your journey of how you got into tech and also just how you got to where you are. So just give us a brief walkthrough. Yeah.
Most definitely. So first of all, I started off, I've always been in tech. Like I've always had a fond interest, messing around with computers, messing around, like trying to fix up routers, doing a little bit of programming, gaming, all that kind of stuff. So I've always had a mystique and an interest in technology, no matter what I've been into. And I've always came back to that. Right. But I never knew where I wanted to start. I've looked at networking, I've looked at cloud, I've looked at software, I've looked at many other fields in technology, and I've always felt lost, when I first got started. I just didn't know where to go. There's so many, as you know, there's a lot. There's data analytics, there's software, there's so much going on, right? And I was like, bro, I don't know where to go. Like, I just genuinely didn't know where to go. So when I went to university, I did a program in computer information systems, right? And as you know, it's so broad. They teach you pretty much. It almost made me even more confused because it's like they teach you so many different niches in technology, and I was like, bro, I don't know where to go. So I've been doing, looking into different niches and everything. But one of the big things is I had an uncle, and that
Mm.
uncle was also a network engineer. So that kind of piqued my interest. I was like, okay. I was like, what do you do on day-to-day basis? He's like, yeah, I just like mess around with routers, switches. What's a router? What's a switch? So he would just explain that to me, what he does on a day-to-day basis, and that kind of brought my interest. So I was like, okay, I know someone who's in the industry. Okay, so at least I have, someone I can go to for advice. And guess what? That's what I've been doing ever since. And I've kind of stuck to that niche for quite a while. And I've looked into many other niches. I've looked into software and everything, but I've always stuck to networking. And what I've done is while I was in school, I was like, okay, after like year 2 or 3, because I was originally supposed to be a civil engineer, which I was doing like my first semester in college. Um, because I was like, maybe I shouldn't do tech in the beginning. And then
Yeah.
I kind of just switched over to eventually doing tech. As soon as I realized, like, yo, civil engineering ain't for me. It was just too boring, you know? So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna jump into tech. So after like second semester, I was like, yo, I'm doing tech. So I did tech for like ever since, and I graduated with CIS degree. And during that time, I also ended up getting my CCNA, which was if you guys don't know, it's a networking certification that's pretty much a standard certification that a lot of people end up getting. So that's one of the main certifications that I got during that time. But also the thing I really wanted to focus on was actually getting experience during that
Mm.
time. So I was like hanging out with my uncle all the time. He would give me all the inside scoops, all the little tips, all the little hacks, and I use all that time to gain as much experience as I possibly can. And during that time, while in university and getting my CCNA, right after I graduated, I was able to land a role as a network engineer in the same company that I'm currently in right now. And in that company, I've learned a ton, man. So
Mm.
much information. Because obviously, as you know, when you first get started in any career, the school and the actual job is completely different, one hundred
Yeah.
percent different. Because you'll notice that too. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm learning this, I'm learning that," but then once they get to the position, maybe they're learning a different code base, or they're learning, or you're not even doing technology. Like it's people will get surprised how different it is when in the real world versus in university. So that first couple, I would say, months when I first got started was intense. Like
Yeah.
everything was new to me, having to reply to emails, having to learn new things on the fly. And also like I'm in operations. So like, when you work in operations is, if you make an outage or mistake that's going to cost the company, money. So it's, you don't, there's a lot of risk involved as well. So I was like, okay, I don't want to mess up anything. So you're always very cautious, but I've grown within this position. One of the main things I did was always ask questions. Don't be afraid to be dumb. Don't try to be alone. Don't try to, try to figure it out on your own and waste time, because at the end of the day, there's people there. Ask for help as much as you possibly can. And I use that throughout my entire career. And as of now, like I'm pretty comfortable in my position now. I've learned quite a bit. And now I'm just trying to, help other people out who are just getting started. Because a lot of people, like, as you know, networking is an industry that's not that talked about from what
Mm.
I've seen. It's a very low key industry. And it makes sense because like networking is so not really complex, but it's more like behind the scenes, right? You don't really see it. You're using very specialized, expensive equipment that's like over hundreds, thousands, even millions of dollars, or even billions. Some spots. So it's like it's crazy how expensive the equipment is. So you don't really get to see it behind the scenes, but it's definitely a lot. And I've learned a lot during this position. So that's basically where I'm at right now. So I'm almost getting through
Amazing.
3 years, which is crazy. So yeah.
Sick, sick. And oh, there's a couple of things that stood out from just your brief walkthrough. And the first thing that kind of stood out is, you talking about that period in anyone who is aspiring to get into the tech fields point. There's always a point that you start to think, what do I go into? I want to get into tech. What do I do? There's so much that you can go into. There's cloud, there's networking, there's software, there's data, there's cybersecurity, there's so much more. And within
Mhm.
those, there is so much deeper that you can go. And there is always a point in most people's journey that they get to this point. And what was great to hear about your journey is that you had someone who mentored you, and showed you a taste of one of these areas. And one of the things that the reason that stands out for me is that I kind of had such a similar journey where I didn't know where I was going with things. And luckily I knew someone who worked in cloud and was a lead cloud engineer. I've mentioned it so many times on this channel. And that was a point of, let me look into cloud. I could see this guy's doing it and he's at a senior level. Let me ask him these questions. And you even spoke about, asking questions, not being afraid to do that. So those are some great points on your journey and how you got to where you are. It's really
Mhm.
great to hear.
Yeah, most definitely. And I was
Exactly.
also going to add to that, like having someone there just to mentor you is it's so invaluable. Like maybe during the time you don't really see the value in it, but
Mm,
it's immensely valuable because you can like those questions. Like a lot of people have doubt, right? Whenever they get started something new, they just feel like it's not meant for me. I don't know if I can do it. But when you have someone who's you can physically see, talk to, maybe even a family member that you can like say, okay, if he can do it, I can do it too. You know, and like you're
mm,
not going to be afraid to talk to him. Like you can or talk to her. Like you can always ask those kind of questions. And there's always like, and they'll always be able to clear your doubts. You know, and they'll always give you like the real talk. And it's like having someone there. It's just it's so important because if you don't, it's like where do I go? And you just end up
exactly.
in that bad position, to be honest. And a lot of people are mainly in that position that I've talked to is like they don't have someone that can guide them or someone that they can that can help them while they're starting.
Exactly, exactly. And
Mhm.
another thing I wanted to touch on was just how you spoke about how, networking can be one of those areas that people don't talk about as much, which is really
Mhm.
interesting and which is great that you're, creating content on this area that you work in because it is a niche area, but the fact of the matter is it's involved in all of our jobs,
Yeah.
big parts of networking and cybersecurity, big lots of networking going on in cloud. And so as an engineer in general, there's an understanding of networking that goes into most of our roles. But one thing I wanted to ask you is just to give sort of a brief explanation for those who want to understand more from you. What is networking and what exactly does a network engineer do?
hmm Yeah. So just to keep it as simple as I possibly can, because there's a lot that goes in that's involved.
Mm,
Basically, the way I like to describe it is what you guys see in the real world. So right now we're communicating. We're having a podcast. We're having a chat. You're in London. I'm in America. How's this possible? Right? What's going on? So behind the scenes, essentially, is as simple as this as I can make it. Is there's literally just lines. That's all it is. A bunch of cables, a bunch of wires. That's literally connecting you and me, but they're moving in extremely fast, like extremely fast. And there's lots of what they call packets and data moving throughout what they call a network. So essentially, is there's data being transferred between me and you in real time using probably UDP traffic for my networking bros that's being sent out. And really, what's happening is there's billions upon billions. I think there's over four. I looked it up. There's over 400 million terabytes of data being transferred a day throughout the internet or phone calls. So basically what networking is we're making sure we're people are able to communicate. We're making sure we're able to have a chat. We're making sure people are able to make phone calls, connect to the internet, go on YouTube, watch TikToks. Basically, any sort of like communication, like telecommunication, is involved in networking. And basically, what we're doing is we're making sure traffic is being flowed properly, making sure the traffic is designed properly. That's the most efficient way because it can get expensive. Because sometimes these wires are going underground, like they're called fiber optical lines that are being sent
mm,
underground, and these are actual lasers, right? And it can get very expensive, like for the equipment, and especially when you're digging out in city centers and stuff like that. And also, like you're across the ocean right now. So there's traffic being sent underwater in the underwater sea channel, which is just mind blowing. Like it's almost magical how much is involved in networking. And basically what we're doing is we're making sure the traffic is routed properly. So making sure the traffic is going the right way, the most efficient path, the quickest path that with the cheapest cost. We're also making sure traffic is aggregated, making sure that it's not all being sent to one way. And if it's like, because it's all, think of it like a super highway, right?
mm.
It's all connected in a sense, and we're making sure all the traffic is being sent in the right direction. And also we're also making sure that the traffic is not corrupted. It's being sent on
Yeah.
time and things like that. So, and obviously there's more to that. And what we do as a network engineer is we troubleshoot that traffic because obviously things happen within the network quite often, almost every day. Whether it's a fiber cut, which is like a basically literally just the fiber gets cut somewhere, and then like the traffic just stops because as soon as a wire gets cut, there's no data. Like if you cut the cord, it's not going to work, right? So traffic has to be rerouted, which usually is like there's obviously different protocols that are involved in networking, different routing protocols like OSPF, ISIS, EIGRIP, but that's like way too advanced. But in the what I would say is like in the general sense, we're making sure traffic is routed, we're making sure traffic is troubleshooted, we're making sure we're designing traffic. We're also implementing new designs onto the network or whether new devices, because obviously there's new neighborhoods that are being installed all over the US. So whenever there's a new neighborhood, they need new devices so they can connect to the internet, obviously. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell. It's lots of command line interface, as if you guys know, which is basically, you'll
Yeah.
log into a Cisco switch, a Cisco router, a Juniper device. You can log in, do all your configurations on there, and basically that's what we've been doing. What I've been doing for so far. Obviously, there's different roles within networking. There's like maybe you can be more troubleshooting focused, where you do a lot of fixing, or you can do a lot of implementation, where you're more of adding to network, more designing. So it really just depends on which field or where you get started, but most of the time that's pretty much what networking is in a
Yeah,
nutshell.
that's a really good explanation for all those who wanted a deeper explanation into what networking is and what network engineers do. Another thing I wanted to touch on, just from your answer, I wanted to understand a little bit more about how much of whatever command line you're using do you really have to know in the role that you're working as a network engineer, because of course with networking is a lot of uh, using commands, yeah, whatever scripting language or
Mhm.
command line you're working with. I wanted to understand how much do you really have to know to be able to work in this area. I think people have a fear of programming, coding, and commands and all this stuff a lot of the
Mhm.
time. And sometimes they want to know, do I have to know this off head, or do I have to know the main commands, or can I Google this every time I want to do this, and this sort of thing. So I wanted to just understand from your perspective how much command line or any sorts of codes or commands you need to know in your sort of
Mhm.
role in your role. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we even get to command line, I would say you have to have a fundamental understanding of like what networking is. You have to know what IP addresses are. You have to know some of the protocols, because you can't really run a command if you don't know what you're running, right? So if you do like a
Mm,
show ARP command and you have no idea what ARP even is, like running the command is kind of like, it wouldn't make sense to run that command if you didn't know what it means. So I would say like the command part is actually the easy part, because you can get commands anywhere. It's even easier than programming, because all you're really doing is Cisco has a set of commands. Juniper has a set of commands. Alcatel, like these are all just different vendors, and most of these vendors are almost very similar in their commands. Some of the commands are actually word for word, but like I said, the command part is almost the easy part, because you can get those commands, those configurations anywhere, right? There's multiple forms whenever you can find information. So, back to your question is how much do you really need to know? I would say you would have to know more about networking and just like the basics of networking before you can really start like understanding the command line, because the command line really is show this, show that, configure this, configure that. So it really isn't as complex, but there is a bit of a learning curve. Like the syntax may be a little bit confusing because it seems kind of weird, but I enjoy it. Like I use it all the time. Cisco has a really good command line as well as Juniper, and it's not that difficult, guys. Like if you guys want to learn it, I would say just open a Packet Tracer, which is a free software made by Cisco, where you can literally log into a switch and actually configure things. And if you guys,
mm,
you can follow a tutorial on YouTube, and just play around. Like I would say, like one of the cool things about the command line is you can do like show. If you guys don't know what show is basically just a verification command. So you can do show and then do question mark, and it'll literally give you a list of all the commands. After that, you can see okay, show ARP, show BGP, show DHCP, and it'll just show you all these sort of protocols. And another thing I wanted to say is like there's tons of protocols in networking that use a bunch of acronyms like ARP, DHCP, ISIS. So that's
yeah.
another thing you gotta like understand is like they use abbreviations for a lot of different protocols, which you guys gotta get used to. But the command line, not that difficult. It's just a little bit of even when I first got started, when I first looked at it, I was like, what is this? But, I watched the video tutorial. I watched some videos, asked my uncle. He showed me him like physically configuring things. So if you just see it, the more often you see things, the easier usually it gets, from what I've noticed. Like if you see things on a day to day basis, you just got to get used to it. It's all repetition. And the more you look at it, the easier it'll get. And then you'll just be constantly getting better at it. And then you'll be running faster. You'll be running shortcuts eventually. So just give it
Yeah.
time. And the more you see it, the better you'll get.
That makes a lot of sense. We just launched a free cloud engineer assessment to evaluate and assess your current skills on your path to becoming a cloud professional. Now, when you take this assessment, it provides some incredible recommendations for your path. And remember, this is completely free. It costs you nothing. It only helps you on your journey. So if this interests you and you are an aspiring cloud professional, definitely take this assessment. I'm gonna leave a link to it. Here's an example of me taking it myself and getting some pretty good recommendations from my own assessment. So guys, check this out, and I hope this is really helpful. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. And I wanted to jump in as well onto what the main bits of technology you have had to learn and understand for your career to work in this industry or to work as a network engineer. Those main things that you need to know and understand to work in your role.
Yeah. So I would say the main thing is, first of all, having a good knowledge base of the basic stuffs of networking. So understanding what IP addresses are, private IPs, public IPs, subnetting, as well as routing. So understanding that, because that's a big concept. Understanding what VLANs are, understanding how that works within a network, understanding basically there's something called the OSI model, which is
Yeah.
a 7-layer model that a lot of network engineers are familiar with. And basically within this model, it includes what they call the first layer is the physical layer. And within that physical layer, it's basically understanding all the physical equipment that we work with. Because we work with physical equipment, right? We have actual SFPs, actual ports, switches, routers that we connect to. So we have to understand what these devices are and what they do. Now there's like the next layer up is the data link layer, right? And within that layer, what's involved is MAC addressing, ARP. So there's a lot more, what I call like layer 2 protocols on there. And now we go to layer 3, which is the biggest, what I would say the biggest and what we're involved with the most is obviously with IP addressing that's involved, routing, making sure packets are getting trafficked and everything. So it's like you have to understand that basic layer. And then once you've kind of understand the OSI model, and like I said, you can learn this pretty much, if you want to ever learn this, you can learn this on, any sort of courses or anything like that. They'll definitely teach this kind of stuff. So that's like what I would say is the main things to learn. But in terms of like what has helped me as a day to day, I would say learn one vendor first. And when I mean one vendor, so that means either Juniper or Cisco. But if you are going to pick one vendor, I would say go with Cisco because they're the biggest vendor, and they have the most supply and the most knowledge base, and the most like they have a lot of tools that you can use that can help you. And one of the tools that I mentioned before was Packet Tracer, which is like I said, it's a free software where you can literally add switches, add IP addresses, add phones, add computers on a virtual network, which is not going to take any storage space from your computer. Like it's literally not going to take any memory. It's extremely efficient. You just plug it in there and you can literally build out a whole network, an entire network, a functional network. And it's that itself is going to immensely help you, in my opinion, because it's going to give you the needed experience to get started. Because, like I said, it's hard to sort of like I wouldn't recommend anyone buy physical equipment unless you really want to. Because I know
Mm.
people who actually they'll buy switches, like use switches or use routers, but that's going to cost time and it takes space and it's sometimes inefficient. But if you are the type of person who actually wants to physically work with devices, I would say buy used devices probably from eBay. Look for used switches, use Cisco switches, Nexus devices that you can just play around with, that you can literally plug into your computer, go into the CLI, because sometimes maybe you need the actual device to play around with to actually get you excited, because maybe like on Packet Tracer it might not be real enough or more exciting enough. But for me, in my case, I think Packet Tracer is is quicker and easier to get started, and I would say use Packet Tracer mainly, and that's like the main thing that I use to get started when I first got into this career path, and also like I went ahead and got certifications
Mm.
as another thing to sort of increase my knowledge base. I'm not sure we'll get into that later. But I would say, get the knowledge first and get the sort of pick one vendor, and I would say pick Cisco. If you are stuck between vendors, just pick Cisco because pretty much all companies at least have Cisco equipment, and play around with Cisco devices, configure stuff, break stuff, troubleshoot stuff, have fun, and use that time to learn.
Amazing. And you mentioned certifications, and you mentioned the CCNA earlier. But
Mhm.
what certifications have you done? And talk to me about how those certifications have helped you in your career so far.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to certifications, a lot of people, they see a tons of certifications. They're like, "Whoa, like what certification should I get?" They always That's like the main question I sort of get is like, "What certification should I get?"
Yeah.
But in my case, I've gotten so far about three certifications, and I'm not really big on certifications. I'm more of like get experience, guys. Like get as much experience as you can. But obviously, there is a time and need for certification, especially if you're not going the degree route. But the big one, I would say the big dog certification that if you want to become a network engineer, you're 100% sure you want to become one, get a CCNA. Don't
Yeah.
waste your time with any other certification. That is the gold standard certification right now, I would say. And it's been a while. It's been existing for a while. And really, what it is, it's a Cisco certification, which is basically, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a difficult certification, especially if you're new to the industry. And that's why a lot of people kind of shy away from it because they think it's too hard, it's too difficult. I don't know if I should do that. But like I said, that's just it's a mental thing, right? Because anything with a long period of time and study, you can pass it, right? You just have to put in the work.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the CCNA, it covers a ton of stuff. It covers routing, switching. It basically covers like how to configure stuff. It covers a tons of layer one uh, configurations, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into the CCNA. And I would say that's the main certification to get. Another certification would be the GNCI. That's another one that's really, really good because there's another vendor that's Juniper. It's basically like the CCNA level of Juniper.
Right.
But it's like I said, that one's also vendor specific. So the main issue with that is like all with the two certifications I brought up with Cisco and Juniper, they're only going to teach you their sort of tech stack, their
Yeah.
configuration. So you're only going to be familiar with their sort of configurations, which that's one big issue I'd say is that you'll understand how they run their commands. But like I said, once you know networking, it doesn't really matter which way you go
Mm.
because you could still like the CLI. Yes, it's different, but you could still learn the CLI with some time because like you can like most of the commands are pretty much similar, right? Like I said, so you wouldn't have to really worry about that. But I would say go for the CCNA. It's the best certification right now to become a network engineer. Like most of my coworkers all have it pretty much.
Mm.
Every network engineer that I know pretty much has a CCNA. And obviously, like if you guys do have the CCNA, that should be more than enough to sort of get your foot wet and kind of get started. But obviously, there's all those other certifications like the CCMP, which is like the next level certification that I'm working towards.
Right.
That's much more difficult than CCNA. And I wouldn't recommend anyone get the CCMP until they've had CCNA with experience because it's going to be overkill and too much information without that much experience is not a good idea in my opinion.
Amazing. No, that makes sense. Getting the associate or CCNA, the associate level one with
Hmm.
some experience before going for the professional one. And like I can relate with even cloud certifications. There's definitely a level where it would be pretty difficult to do this without actually having experienced it and worked on it. Like okay,
Hmm.
obviously the fundamentals is for everyone, and even associates, you might be able to wing it without experience. You could get that, but when you go further than that to expert level, I mean, I haven't done any expert levels myself, but I understand that's kind of a different level where they actually require a lot more understanding of things. So I could see the synergy with the networking certification as well, and the CCNA and CCNP. Um, and another thing I wanted to ask you about is just, I mean, when I speak about networking, or I've been involved in some sort of networking projects, or things that I've worked on in the various roles that I've worked on in the tech industry. One of the things that I've come across and understood is that there's a physical aspect to networking. There's there's hardware involved, and it's not like cloud or software development where there all you do is type and click. There is a lot more moving things around, or racks, or carrying servers and routers and this sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough to be able to experience a couple of projects where I was going in and doing the physical side, which I quite enjoyed, which is kind of unique to certain areas of tech. So what's your view on that physical side of working? Is that like a real thing with every role, or is it just
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know
yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because, like, networking, like I said, it's a very unique industry in tech because, and I like to call it like the blue collar of tech because we're literally the physical workers there. Like, we can actually go into a physical data center where there's tons of routers, tons of switches, tons of optical gear, expensive equipment, lots of fans, and you walk in there. You have your laptop. You're connected onto it. You're configuring it. So there's a lot of moving parts. You can play around with stuff. So it's like if you guys are like, you want to get into tech, but you also want that physical side of it,
mm,
definitely look into networking because networking offers you that. And I know, like, working behind a computer all day, working with code, it can be kind of a bit much. And like having the ability to just like, hey, just walk around the data center. It's always exciting. Every time I get to go to a data center, I'm so excited because I just seeing the equipment. It's amazing and like it's the best, honestly. So, but if you ever want to get into networking, there's definitely that involved. So that's something that you probably would have to get used to is like seeing the physical equipment. But in my case, I don't really get to do that because my company's a bit of a bigger company.
mm,
So we have people there on site. So whenever we need them to fix stuff, plug in a port, plug in a device, remove a device, add a new device, they'll be like our eyes and ears there, and then we'll just like communicate with them either on a bridge or like a phone call. And during that phone call, we're like, hey, yeah, did you connect it? And then we'll go into our device or we'll go into the CLI and see if they configured it. And then we'll go like, or we'll see if it's like connected or not. So we can actually, they'll basically be there for us. But there are times where we end up going to the data center. Because we basically what we do is, I'm more of the implementation side, and we're implementing all over the U.S. So there's
mm,
data centers all over the U.S. and there's people that work specifically at that data center. So whenever
right.
we have a question or is that device plugged in or is this device installed, we can just like send a quick message, have them check that device, and then is it installed or is the SFP installed or is a port missing, and a lot of that is really what they call like layer one activities, which is like I said, is the physical layer. And
Right.
most of the time is like you're connecting things. And if you guys see in a data center, there's tons of cables, and it looks like there's cables like crisscross applesauce. Like it's crazy how much is is out there, and it can seem a bit daunting when you first look at it. But like I said, the more you see things, the easier it gets, and that physical side really brings excitement for me because you're able to physically see what you're doing. You can physically you remove a port, you can physically see that on your data analytics part that we have. Like we have a tracking system that we can track. If a port goes down, like it's more of a GUI that we use, or we can
Yeah.
actually see it on the command line interface. We can say, oh, port's down. We can see the light levels, the power levels that's installed on the cable or on the laser, so we can see okay, there's no so one of the main troubleshooting things that we do is most of the time the power levels are really bad, right?
Mm,
So then we'll have with the people at the site like, hey, can you check the power levels? What they'll do is like maybe they'll clean the cable, right? So they'll put some sort of like device inside the port just to clean out the dust because even a little bit of dust can make it dirty and make it like traffic flow bad. So like everything has to be as sterilized as you possibly can. So that's like one of the cool things that we're able to do and work with, and it definitely brings excitement. So if you guys ever like that idea of being able to physically work with equipment, but you don't want to, you don't want to code all day, then this is definitely an industry that would definitely be exciting for you.
great, great. I'm glad we touched on that as well because yeah, it is a unique factor when I think about it, and networking is one area that's so different to a lot of the other areas. And the area that I work in, it's fully cloud. You sit at home, you type, you click.
Mhm.
And for those who actually think about tech this way, just know that there are certainly areas to this day that are, a lot more physical, and there's a lot more, you know, I don't want to say labor, but like labor going into to what you're doing,
Yeah.
which some people would prefer like so much more to being the person that sits and clicks. So I'm really glad we touched on that. And moving on, I wanted to get into this question about your advice on getting into the industry, on getting into networking or tech in general. But for those aspiring people who are trying to get into this area and get their first roles in this area, what would you say is your best advice to those people? What would their steps to getting in be? Or generally, what is your best advice for them?
Yeah, yeah. So whenever you want to get into networking, I would say the main thing you need is experience. And then people are going to say, "How do I get experience?" Because most jobs want experience, right? So what I would say is, first of all, get the knowledge. You're going to need the knowledge either way, because nowadays companies, like, they don't want to take the time to train you. Some companies, so what you want to do is you want to get the knowledge, and there's tons of knowledge in the internet. Like, you can get it for free from YouTube. You can get a paid course for dirt cheap on Udemy for like 10-15 bucks, which is what I did when I first got started. I took a Udemy course for $15 by Neil Anderson. Fantastic course, like a 40-hour course. And I went through that thing like 5 times, literally 5 times. Because when I first got started networking, I was like, everything was like new to me. So I didn't know how to like study, how to like get started. So I went through that course so many times. I would like watch it like as I'm going working out, as I'm going to the gym, just to what I like to do is I want to like brainwash myself into understanding networking technology, right? Because I heard someone say, like, if you hang around with network engineers, or hang around with people that are in a particular industry for a while, you're end up gonna know things like without even
Mm,
like you'll be unintentionally learning. So I wanted to get to the period of unintentionally learning networking. So that's either hanging out with my uncle, or like watching videos, or just like just like do it as entertainment time, right? Like, try to like listen to a podcast or anything like that. Like, that's I try to get to that like mojo of like, let me just learn, 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 learn. So I spent quite a bit of time learning, and like I said, to get started, I would say get the knowledge. That's the first possible thing. The first thing you need to do is get the knowledge, because without the knowledge, it's going to be hard. And even when you get started, it's going to be even harder too. So you might as well learn now, just to understand just the basics first. So once you've learned the knowledge, I would say get a certification. And to get a certification, I would say go for the CCNA. And like I said, certifications are good, but the issue with certifications is that the way they work is they're just multiple choice questions, right? And with these multiple choice questions, like, you can know the knowledge, but still do bad on the exam, right?
mm,
Because it's you got to be good at test taking. So you also want to learn the skill of test taking as well, because that's just the nature of certifications, and how they test you. But I would say get better at test taking, but at the same time, get the real world experience. So if you possibly can, try to get any job in tech anywhere, whether it's help desk,
mm,
whether it's a knock role. It really just depends on your experience level, but try to get any sort of experience that you possibly can. Doesn't matter where, because people say, "Where do I go?" Anywhere. Having even a little bit of like unrelated experience in tech is going to help you no matter what, right? And who knows? Maybe there's network engineers at that company that you can network with, right? So there's a lots of potential, as soon as you get your first level of experience, right? So I would say get the experience, learn the knowledge, and get a certification like a CCNA. But like I said, I would say start off to if you want to. The big thing I want you guys to know is pick one field, right? Like,
mm,
if you want to do networking, stick to that as long as you possibly can, right? Because that way your knowledge in networking is going to go up, 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 right? That way your knowledge base is going to get increased. But if you go to networking and then go to cybersecurity and then go into cloud all within a year, you're going to have like a base level of knowledge of all of them, and then that's
mm,
not going to really help you in your career. So I would say just pick one thing, tunnel vision. If you are going to do networking, the roadmap that I would say is learn the knowledge first from like a video course, um, and then with that video course, get a certification. During that time, try to land a role as a basic level, IT job, tech job. Doesn't really matter. Sometimes you can get lucky and get a position that's like closer to networking. But if not, it's okay. Work within that position. Try to network with people who are in networking roles, whether it's people that work at knock, people who work in troubleshooting. Also, like go into LinkedIn and network with people. Try to find someone like in your town, in your city, who is a network engineer who you can literally talk to, who you can ask advice from, because having that person is going to be very important because they're going to give you like the real time advice, because obviously things change, right? The industry changes
Mm,
quick. So you want to have someone who can give you that real time advice, because if you're watching a video from YouTube from like 5 years ago telling you advice, it may not be relevant now. It may
it's
not be
true.
relevant. Tech is always changing. Tech moves fast. Like there's AI now. Like you want the real time advice and you want the real advice, like find someone who's going to be like brutally honest and real with you, and tell you like where to go, because most people will just tell you get this, get that, but everyone's different. Where your starting point is different for everybody. So having someone who can literally sort of be a mentor is going to be very important. So try to find that person, particularly like a real, like in real time. So like someone like in real life that you can meet and talk to, and then like ask questions, like hop on a call whenever. So find that little person that can help you. So now you have your certification, you have your experience, you have someone who's mentoring you, you have a little bit of experience. Like you should have enough knowledge to get started in this career. But in my case, obviously, I went the degree route. You can also, if you do have a degree, you can leverage that as well. But I've seen people without degrees, with this, or with just basic level associate's degrees, that are able to land jobs in networking. Because, like I said, if you have the knowledge, they'll hire you. Like you don't need a degree. A lot of people
Mm,
say you need a degree. Maybe 20, 30 years ago. Nowadays, it's different, I would say. Like if you
yeah.
have the knowledge, you have the skills, and you can interview well, like you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And you just got to find that company that's willing to take a chance on you, see that you're willing to learn. And it's going to be a grind. It's literally going to be a grind. No matter where you start, whenever you're new to things, it's going to be harder. When I first got started, it was a bit difficult because, like I said, I like I when I first got started, I was new to it. You're gonna go through periods of pain, of struggle. You're gonna feel like, is this even worth it? Should I even like? Is this path even worth it for me? But those are the moments and times where you have to stick to it. You have to stick to it. You have to take your time and effort, and just know that with time and effort and goodwill, eventually you'll land that role. So, like I said, it's getting the knowledge, getting the experience, getting certifications, and finding a mentor. Those are the main four, I would say. If you can get that main
Yeah.
four locked in and sticking to that one path, you're golden.
Amazing. That's some great advice, and I like the structure of it. Those are the 4 steps, guys. If you're
Mhm.
going on this path, Wale has given you some great steps to follow as a roadmap to getting into this field. And if you follow that, your chances will be way higher. No way. There is just no way. Some of you guys have been watching this far and have not subscribed to the channel. Others have yet to even like the video. And for the people watching on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, some of you have not even rated the podcast. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you got any value, like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on whatever streaming platform. All right, let's get right back to the video. One thing I wanted to ask you, just based on your advice, is where do you see yourself in the next few years? Is this networking area somewhere that you see yourself working in over a long period of time? As you said, like if you stay in an area and build up your skills in that one area, you just keep going up and up and up. But also, I know for a lot of people, moving around as well is something they say, yeah, you can learn a bit of this, and then you'll be more well-rounded, or things like that. So what's your thoughts on that? And for you, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself in this networking industry long term, or do you see yourself moving into other areas of tech that are related as well? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously with tech, it's very exciting. There's so many different niches you can get into, and there's like two schools of thoughts, right? You can either, learn one skill, master that skill, get better and better and better, become more marketable because you're the best in the world at that skill, or you could be the
Mm,
person that learns a skill and then sees, okay, I can use my networking to get into cloud, and then gets into cloud because like obviously like maybe you can get bored after a certain period of time. And I know people who they get into networking. And after like maybe 4 or 5 years, they're like, okay, I want to jump into something new. Like I've been doing this for a while. I want to start something fresh. So they'll get into cloud. They'll get into like network automation. And one of the cool things about networking is like you can get into cybersecurity. You can get into cloud. You can get into like automation. There's the like just because you're in networking doesn't mean you can get stuck there. Like there's so many sub niches that value the skill of networking. So it's gonna literally help you like crazy. So I would say like even in my case, I'm like at the point where like should I like master networking, keep going, keep grinding, or should I kind of jump around? So I'm in that phase where I'm a little bit confused, like because it's a difficult path. Like I'm not 100% sure, but one of the fields that really have been exciting me is security, and it's
Mm.
particularly like network security, because obviously with networking, there's a subset of networking that's network security, um, and that niche is like very interesting in my opinion because I like the idea of like stopping bad actors and like trying to protect the network from like because obviously like you want to keep things secure. So there's a different sub niches within tech, and like I said, in my case, I really can't answer that question because I honestly don't know where I'll go.
Yeah.
Like in the next 4 years. But if I did have an idea, I definitely want to be in security, probably network security. And like I said, like having that networking knowledge is going to help. So even if you get into networking, you end up like, hey, I don't really like this. Like it doesn't really matter because you can still go into another niche within tech because most companies that I've seen, they all value networking because most people that are not in networking end up not even learning it because they're like, oh, it's, why do I need to learn this? Right. Because it's like, sometimes like, I'm like, in your case, do you really learn networking as a cloud engineer?
Yeah, you do.
You
You
do.
have to understand it to a certain level, depending on which area you're learning. And for
Mhm.
me, working in cloud infrastructure, you need to have a good foundational understanding of networking within the cloud. Within configuring is you're using IP addresses, you're working with subnets, you're configuring virtual networks.
Mhm.
You do have to have an understanding of networking. It might be more specific to Microsoft and networking within the cloud. But yeah,
Mhm.
you need a good understanding of networking. And I feel like most roles, as you said, cybersecurity, very much so,
Mhm.
cloud, very much so. Yeah, most areas you will need to have an understanding. And it's funny, because as you were explaining, I was just thinking of, I how you spoke about wanting to move into cyber. And if you did, it would be network security.
Mhm.
And similarly with me, I started in a cloud infrastructure role as a cloud administrator, as your administrator. Then I
Mhm.
moved into cloud security. So it's like security is so interesting because everything has to be secured. Each area has to be
Yeah.
looked after. And so there's network security, there's cloud security, there's different parts of security. And
Mhm.
whichever area you start with, you're able to leverage those skills to move into the next area. And I also had a friend who was working in desktop support, like he was a desktop engineer. And he was
Okay.
asking me like, I want to move into cybersecurity, and I've been working as a desktop engineer for like over a year. But like, how do I get experience in cybersecurity? But I was like, bro, you're working as a desktop engineer. You work with firewalls, you work with IPs, you work with all this stuff. You already have experience in cybersecurity. You just need to leverage that and communicate that to where you want to go next. That, yeah, you've been working somewhat in cybersecurity. So it's really interesting you say that. And yeah, of course, in cloud, especially in my part of cloud and cloud security, an understanding of networking is almost is required. So yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy because like most people don't even understand like the skills they're learning. Like if you have like I brought up with the experience thing, like your friend, like people don't understand like the experience you're getting, you can leverage it. Like you don't like most people don't understand that, but like what you do on a day to day basis, even if it's like very minute or very little, the fact that you're able to work with this equipment, you're gaining experience no matter what, right? Like I
Yep.
said, sometimes you'll be working with a firewall, be like, hey, bro, like just like your friend, like that's the easy way in because you can always talk about what you do on a day to day basis. And obviously, like if you want, you can, you're working with that equipment. You can ask, your manager. You can ask your if there's other coworkers who can literally just like, you can just like peer mentor and like watch what they do on a day to day basis. And that's literally gaining experience. You can ask questions right then and there. So it's crazy the career track you can get into once you have experience.
Mm.
And like I said, it's once you're in networking or once you're in a certain field, it's going to open more doors for you. And there is one thing that you guys gotta kind of be wary of is something called shiny object syndrome, because
Hmm.
you could be in a position where you want to pick a field, or you're dead set on a field, and you see another person in this field. You're like, oh, should I jump into that? And you see another person in this field in cloud. Oh, should I get into that? And then you see another person do automation. You see another person, my bad. You see another person do like a bunch of different like things, and you're like, bro, where do I go? And you end up in this position where you think every other field in tech is better than
Hmm.
your field, or the field that you're getting into, and you're in this kind of weird position where you end up stuck between all these fields and you don't know where to go. So that's like another thing that you got to be wary of, is just because you see someone doing security, someone doing data analytics, don't jump off your wagon. Stick to what you've been doing, and try to stick it out for, I would say, 2 to 3 years minimum,
Hmm.
just so you can get that base level experience. Because as soon as you start jumping around, you're gonna be wasting time. You're not really gonna be in that level of, I would say, mid tier without that level of experience. Because if you're just jumping, it's not a good idea. Try to stick to a certain path for a decent amount of time. Once you've kind of mastered that path and you felt like you've learned a lot, you gain a tons of experience, then it's the time to transition, right? You can get
Wow.
into either like security or cloud. So that's what I would say.
That's a really good point. Like the grass is greener on the other side.
Hmm.
Oh, wait, cloud, they make more money.
Yeah.
Or man, their stuff looks pretty cool. Or they get to work remotely. I want to do that. And then you end up like switching. And then when you're in cloud, you start to look, oh, cybersecurity. Oh, and then you're like, oh, software. But no, that's such a great point on really focusing on one area and building up the skills before doing the jumping, because loads of people are jumping for a salary hike. And
Hmm.
on a recent podcast, someone spoke to me as well about this, and he was like, yeah, you can only job hop to a certain point where you're going to stay mid level, or you're not going to be, you're not going to be able to job hop much further, and you're not going to be able to get those salary rises if you are you haven't stayed in one place and picked up the learnings and gained the experience to a level that another place would see that, okay, yeah, this person is at this level and we want to bring him in at this amount, right? So it's a really good point that you make on there with
Hmm.
that one.
Yeah. And what analogy I like to say is, like, think of it like sports. Imagine if you just picked one sport, or you played seven sports, right? If you want to make it to the NBA, you're playing seven sports. You're probably not going to make it to the NBA, right?
Mm,
But if you stick with basketball and only play basketball, right, and then you're gonna be what they call it, like, you'll be an expert in that field of hooping, right? And then you can actually demand a higher salary because you're one of the best in the world, right? So if you want to get to that position of expertise, like, if you guys are going for salary, you're almost better off sticking to one field and being the best as you possibly can
mm,
in that field. That's honestly the best way. If you're going for salary, it may take, like, you may not have those big salary increases in the beginning, but over a long period of time, like maybe 10 years, in 10 years, you're probably going to be making more, because you'll be able to demand a higher salary because your knowledge level, your experience level in that one particular field is so high that they'll be like, yeah, we have to, you can demand a higher salary, versus
yeah.
jumping around and getting these little boosts, but you're never actually getting that. Yeah, you're, like I said, that mid tier level of experience, but never getting to that expert level where you get like the crazy money.
Amazing, amazing. No, those are some great points. And now let's move on to my favorite part of the podcast, which I ask everyone this one question. And that question is to just tell us one interesting career story. And I always say this can be a really good story where something amazing happened, or you did really well in something, and yeah, yay. Or it could be something that is terrible, something really bad happened, you made a mistake, whatever the case may be. So what is one interesting career story that you want to share with us, Wally?
Yeah. So, this is crazy because if you guys don't know, when you work in networking, you're in operations, right? And if you cause an outage, we're mainly like, we work with customers, so like home internet customers, right? So if you cause an outage if your internet goes out, hey, it could be me. But it's crazy. So one of the crazy stories that I had is, the way we work is we write what they call methods of procedures, which is basically like a step by step guide of how to configure something. And when you configure it, mainly they do the configurations at night, right? And the reason we do them at night is because there's less traffic that time, and if there's an
Yeah.
outage, hopefully not, there's less people online at that time, right? So, what I did was when I wrote out this method of procedure, I had one small mistake, a very, very small mistake. And like, it's almost hard to catch. And what that mistake was is, if you guys know what IPv6 addresses, there's 128 subnets that you can have on that, right?
Mm.
And the smaller the subnet, the bigger the range of subnets within that. So the big mistake that I made was, if you want to do a point-to-point link on an IPv6 address, and you only want two IPs max on the two host IPs in one subnet, you would use a /127 address,
Right.
right? But I made it. I when I wrote the method of procedure, I dropped the 7, so what did it become? A /12
Eesh.
on an IPv6 address. And now, so you go from 2 hosts to basically 2 million hosts. So now any IP within that range gets, it becomes a duplicate IP. And whenever there's a duplicate IP on the network, especially with public IPs, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So there was a duplicate IP on that network, and luckily for me, there's only 2 IPs using that range of hosts, which I was so thankful for that. It would have been a disaster if there was, there could have been millions of customers on there. And what happened was that ended up getting configured. And in the morning, I get a text, say, or like a what they call you get pinged basically whenever there's like an outage, and it says, oh, there's an outage in this region. I was like, I worked on that. Let me check it out. And then, like, oh, it's on that same device that I wrote the method of procedure on. I was like, man, what did I do? Because you always have that innate fear, like, maybe I did something wrong. So,
Yeah.
it ended up causing an outage, from a small mistake. And these methods of procedures can be long. It could be like a 5-6 page document of a step by step
Yeah.
guide. And on the configuration section, it was instead of a /127, it was a /12, and that caused a decent outage. And obviously, that's the learning lesson, right? And during that time, obviously, you go through like a root cause analysis. You explain how this happened. How could this been prevented? And it was a learning lesson. This was like when I was kind of new to the industry, and my eyes weren't as like, I would say strong enough, or I didn't have hawk eyes at that time, because obviously
Mm.
the more you like look at configurations, the easier it is to notice things that are incorrect, right?
Right.
Although I should have noticed that. I don't know. I'm surprised I still didn't get that, but it still went through like the cracks, and it still ended up getting configured. And that was a major learning lesson. Like that, whenever the outage happened, like I was kind of scared. Like I was like, man, did I mess up? Am I done? Like like you always have that fear. But obviously, this
Yeah.
company's, they told me like, hey, don't worry about it. It's your first one. Everyone has like their own outage story, and like I said, it's a learning lesson, right? Like you want to take that time to learn. Like, okay, cool, what was a mistake that happened? Obviously, it was not having a good attention to detail, right? And missing that small little thing. Because, like I said, one small little thing can cause a huge problem. Just like what
Yeah.
happened with CrowdStrike. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like a small thing can break. Like it's crazy what happens in tech. So that was like one of the one of a I would say like a bad story, but also a good story because I learned a lot. And now ever since then, every time I configure something, I look at that V6 address, or also like I also look at the V4 subnet, and I always make
Yeah.
sure, is it the right subnet, because that subnet matters more than the IP, guys. When you guys ever get into networking, like look at the subnet mask, because that can change a lot. So
Wow.
it's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, like you said, everyone's probably gonna have a similar story to that because nobody is perfect, and
yeah,
and mistakes happen, right? So thanks so much for sharing that. I know, like, for some of these bad stories, yeah, at the time, panicking. Like, I have so many
mhm,
of these stories where at the time I'm panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to lose my job. The whole world is like, I want the world to swallow me. Like, but like,
yeah,
your manager's like, okay, yeah, no, this happened, da da da. you're new to this, and it's a learning thing at the end of the day, right? So
Mhm. You get your
that's
battle
pretty amazing.
scars.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Battle scars.
battle tested.
Exactly. So let's move into just speaking a little bit about content creation. And I find it amazing because Wally, for those who don't know, has just like started 4 months ago, right? Around four
Yeah,
months,
around 4 months ago.
and it's gone really well in 4 months because yeah, I mean we'll talk about it, but I want to ask you, when did you start, and what made you start creating?
Yeah, so when I first got started, I had a strong difficulty of finding networking information when it comes to network engineering, and it's like I just there's a sea of software engineering.
Yeah.
There's a, if you want to learn software engineering, there's so many YouTubers, so many people explaining it. So I was like, where are the network guys? Like I couldn't find anyone. So I was like, bro, like and I'm working in the industry already. So like, let me just start a channel. Let me just. So I think I created one video. I was like, I just created like a guide of how to become a network engineer. And then I created like a couple more videos, and then like obviously I wasn't getting any views, and I just posted it because a lot of people were asking questions, and I was like, let me just create a video. Maybe other people had questions about it, and then I can just send them my video whenever they have a question. And then out of nowhere, like my channel started getting crazy amount of views. Like those first three videos, like whoa, like like people were kept commenting like this is an amazing video. I was like wow, like this was kind of shocking, you know. Especially like when you create content, it's like people you've never met are just saying thank you so
Mm,
much. You helped me immensely. And I'm like I was almost in awe of of the gratitude that people had. I was like, okay, this is something that people like, so let me just start creating more content. And my content is very simple. Like I just put on my camera, I sit behind my desk or in front of my desk, and I just talk about my
mm,
experience. So it's not that difficult to create. And I've been having a good time talking about it because I've learned a lot. I've helped a lot of people. Anytime someone has a questions, I'm able to just answer that question. Like a lot of people have been able to connect with me. So it's something that I just started, and I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I've been on, I've used YouTube my entire life, right?
yeah.
And now being on the other side of content creation is just, it's crazy to be on the side, and it still feels kind of surreal. Because, it just it feels different, right? It's a different experience from consuming to actually being the one actually producing the content. So
Yep.
it's definitely interesting, and I've enjoyed it. I've been going on for 4 months now, and I've just been posting videos on YouTube mainly. That's like my main area. Although I definitely want to jump into other areas. Like I got used to like posting content because I'm not really like a social media person.
Mm,
Like it's all kind of like I even went like a period of like 3 years with just like no social media, no IG, no like Twitter, no Facebook. Because I'm mainly like the type of person where like I like to have real in person communication with people.
yeah.
But now I realize like we're in a world where like the internet's everywhere, like there's social media everywhere, and I realize there's a lot of opportunities that can come from content creation. And you're connecting with people, even though you might not know them, they know you more than, like, it's kind of a weird kind of dynamic because like even
Yep.
because I have calls with people sometimes, like whenever they have questions, like, okay, let me just hop on a call, and like, bro, I watched this video about this and this and this. I'm like, it's crazy how much they know me, but I know nothing about them. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. So I've really enjoyed content creation. I've been able to help, I think, a lot of people so far. People have been saying thank you so much. So I'm gonna continue this because it seems like a lot of people do enjoy the content, and yeah, it's definitely been fun.
Amazing, bro. And I've just like, yeah, when you reached out to me about coming onto the podcast, I already knew who you were. It was
Yeah,
like I'd already seen your video. I've watched a couple of them. I was like, oh, this is
yeah,
good stuff. This guy knows what he's talking about.
yeah.
And yeah, like you say,
Crazy,
I
man.
mean, it's putting stuff out there, and people find this stuff really valuable. And it's real life stuff, and it's a real experience of working in the industry that you're sharing to people, and that is super valuable for people trying to get into that space. And for the fact that networking, especially, there aren't many people who are focusing on that area. And it's amazing that you've come in and put out some great content straight away on that area. And of course, that's going to resonate with a lot of people who have been flooded with software engineer day in the lives, or like just more other content that doesn't relate to their field. and having like an area that they really resonate with, that is niche. And that's the thing about things being niche, is that when it's niche, it's directed at a certain person where that person's like, oh my gosh, this guy is talking to me. And that really resonates. And so no, it's great what you've been doing, and just like your personality and your sort of directness and the truth that you speak on your videos is really good and really helpful. So yeah, how have you found it in general creating content?
Yeah, yeah. In the beginning, like it's kind of difficult. Like there's a lot that goes involved. Like I thought maybe you just put up a camera, but you got to set up the lighting, you got to set up the mic, you got to make sure the camera's recording. Because I've had periods where I record like a 10, 15 minute video. I'm like, this is a banger, and then I go to the camera. I'm like, bro, it didn't even one of the worst things I hate about iPhone is like as soon as you hit record, like it'll record, and then like you get that notification because your battery drains quickly. So it'll be like, oh, 20%.
Yeah,
And it'll just stop the video. So I'd be like, bro, or like I'll get a phone call and then like the video will stop. Like, damn. Like, cause like, cause I like to do like unscripted videos. Like,
mm,
I don't have a script at all. So I just like
wow,
turn up the camera and just talk because I'm not the type of person that likes to go off a script or like read off a teleprompter because it just, that's not my type. Like, even when I give
mm,
presentations, I just have like a list of things I want to talk about, like a hit list, and that's pretty much it. But there's no like physical script. And then I'll just kind of like waffle on whatever I see. So that's basically how I create content. And like I said, the directness I like because I want to just keep it real. I want no fluff, just shooting on exactly what you need. Because I know the internet is just full of fluff, full of nonsense,
it's true.
and people are just spewing just BS. I would say, and I'm the type of person like, bro, this is all you need. Like I'm talking. Basically, I want to make a video where I'm talking to my like if I get like from 5 years ago watch a content creator, I want it to be exactly how I'm talking, just so as direct as like honest as possible. Because most people are just they're just talking, 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 and then they never get to the point. And it's just like just give me the truth and exactly what I need to sort of break into tech or whatever. But
Yeah,
getting like creating the content definitely takes time, and I'm definitely new to it, so I gotta get better at like lighting, at mics. Obviously I want to jump into like short form content as well, so I gotta learn that aspect of it. But it's been fun. Like you learn a lot. Like the beginning I didn't know how to edit videos, but my videos don't really require much editing. But now in the beginning it took me a while to edit. Now it's like, well, like I can edit very quickly. So it's an all learning curve, but it's been fun. I really enjoyed it. And I never thought it'd be a content creator, but I guess I am one now. I don't know, maybe not, but it's been fun.
amazing, amazing. And it's funny how you say you used your iPhone, and you're still using your iPhone for all your videos, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm the type of person like, why do I need a camera? Like the iPhone, I can put on 4K cinematic mode.
Yep.
The lighting, all I know is like the lighting matters more. That's all that
Mm-hmm.
matters. The lighting and actually the mic. So if you have a good mic and good audio, like you don't really need the best of the best camera because I'm not doing any B-roll, any like crazy like cinematics. And maybe I'll get into that. But as of now, like if you want to get started, just get a camera, get a good light, get a microphone, and just talk. Right. And then if your
Yep.
videos suck, don't even post them. Just keep practicing because like that's the honest truth. Like if your videos aren't good, just repost. Like don't even post it. Right. That's only you're gonna see it. And then after a period of time, you get better at talking. You won't stutter as much, and it'll just get better. That's what I've noticed. But
Mm.
you know, I would say start off with simple content. Don't try to create the perfect video. You never know. Like I thought my videos were bad. Apparently, people like them, so I was like, okay, I'll just keep creating them. So it's and stay consistent as well. I have a hard time doing this because you're trying to manage your job, social
Yeah.
life, and also content creation because this content creation takes a lot of time. It really
True.
does. So it's something that I got to get used to, get more efficient at it, and yeah. So like, tell me about yours though. Like I'm really curious about how you got started and how it's going for you so far.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's similar to you, man. I mean, it's funny how I was just gonna say, like, people are like, how do I start? How do I start? I don't have the camera, I don't have the light, and I don't have the da, da,
Yeah,
da, da, da. Bro, I had an iPhone. My first video was on an iPhone 6. I got it on an iPhone 6, not even 8,
yeah,
bro, 6. And that video is not on the channel anymore, by the way. But um, you just have to start really, and iPhones are really good these days, and it's really easy to put on an iPhone. Even like the main things you need is an iPhone and a tripod to start, and
Mhm.
after that, if you can have a good mic, great. And if you're thinking about lighting, just do it in front of your window, and it's not that deep, and you'll find out that people actually care about what you're saying. I mean, the first few videos I made, obviously I wasn't they weren't I didn't feel like they were great either. I was just like, let me just do this, let me just talk. And people just, yeah, like just like you, started commenting saying, yeah, no, this is great, really appreciate this, this is so helpful, all this kind of stuff. And then you sort of realize, like, okay, there's so much more that I can speak about, and if that's helpful, then there's so much more that will be helpful to certain people. And you don't realize that, yeah, like everyone has a voice and everyone has things that they can share that will help others. And if you're watching this, you have things that you can share that would help others. And so that's just what it is with content creation. It's unique to the person speaking. And for me, the stuff that I came with at the beginning, I didn't think it was, great, but people really liked it. And as I went, just trying to improve and do more and put out more and obviously stay consistent. I feel like I've been relatively consistent for the past couple of years, or almost 2 years, and I just got to keep that going. And and now with the podcast, I've mentioned this in a few episodes, but this podcast is all about bringing the knowledge of people like you, Wally, to my audience, because I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little. I know about what I've learned in my 3 years of working in tech in my specific areas that I've worked. And this whole Tech Certified podcast is about bringing the knowledge of people like you, people like other people who've been on the podcast, like, like Cyber Queen, or um, Simon, or Viola. Like, there's so many people, that I want them to share their knowledge and expose the audience to another side of working in this industry and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's my kind of view on content creation and what's been going on so far.
Yeah, most definitely. And you'd be surprised how much your content can affect people's lives and how much you can help people. Because sometimes you feel like you might not know anything, or like your voice doesn't really matter, but just you'd be surprised of how much people would be thankful for the content you make. And if you have any knowledge, like, feel free to like create content, spread it out. People are definitely going to enjoy it. Like, if you're afraid to start being afraid on camera, like I said, just create the content, but don't post it. Right, that's like one tip I would have for you guys. So at least you're getting experience creating the content, setting up the camera, setting up the lighting, talking on camera, because it's a kind of it's interesting talking on camera. It feels kind of weird because
Mm,
you're talking but no one's there. It's like it's kind of a strange thing, but you get used to it over time. So yeah, it's definitely fun, and I definitely do like doing your podcast of what you've been doing, and I think you're doing an excellent job. Like, keep it up, and you're definitely gonna you're gonna grow. Like, and I'm
thanks,
really
man.
happy for you and everything that you've done, and man, just keep it up.
Of course, will not
Mhm.
stop. Consistency is key.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
thanks so much, Wally. This has been a really good episode. I really mean that. Really, really good episode. And I'm sure like those watching will really value all of the things that you shared today. And to before we end off, I just wanted to ask you if there's anything you wanted to shout out or share or plug to the audience.
Yeah, so if you guys ever want to find me, have any questions, my channel name is Network Wali, at Network Wali on YouTube, or you can just type in Wali Network Engineering. You can find me there. If you guys want to like DM me, have any questions, you can find me on Instagram. It's IT with Wali. So you can just message me there if you guys have any questions on networking. I'm able to help. Just let me know. Feel free to DM. My DMs are open. So yeah, those are the main two places you can find me.
Amazing, amazing. Wally, thanks so much for being on this podcast. Everything you said will be linked in the description for all those watching. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us on this episode today. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.